Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, captured the imagination of generations with its whimsical sets, unforgettable characters, and magical charm. But behind the golden tickets and rivers of chocolate, the real lives of many cast members were far from a fairy tale. While the film became a beloved classic, several of its stars faced tragedy, loss, and heartbreak after the spotlight faded. Some died young, others battled illness, addiction, or lived in quiet obscurity, carrying the weight of fame that never lasted. In this video, we take a closer look at the actors who once brought Roald Dahl's vivid world to life and reveal the haunting, sometimes shocking stories of what happened to them after the factory gates closed forever. Gene Wilder was born on June 11, 1933, and portrayed the eccentric Willy Wonka in the 1971 film at the age of 38. As the enigmatic factory owner, Wilder delivered a performance that was equal parts enchanting and unsettling. A man who seemed to oscillate between benevolent dream maker and moral arbiter, masking danger behind a candy-coated smile. Audiences were captivated by his unpredictable energy, but that strangeness was no act. Wilder's early life was marred by psychological pressure. After his mother suffered a heart attack when he was 8, a doctor told him he must never upset her, triggering a lifelong compulsion to make others laugh, even at the cost of his own well-being. Despite breakout roles and stardom alongside Mel Brooks and Richard Pryor, Wilder was quietly haunted by depression and a string of professional setbacks, including several films he directed himself that flopped both critically and commercially. Behind the scenes, he was known for being obsessive, frequently rewriting dialogue and refusing to work with actors who didn't match his rhythm, leading to rifts with studios and collaborators. His greatest personal trauma came with the death of his third wife, comedian Gilda Radner, whose slow decline from ovarian cancer devastated him emotionally and spiritually. He never truly recovered. Wilder remarried but became increasingly reclusive in his final years, eventually vanishing from public life as Alzheimer's disease slowly eroded his mind. He kept the diagnosis a secret for 5 years, fearing it would overshadow the joy he once gave others. Gene Wilder died on August 29, 2016, at age 83 in Stamford, Connecticut. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated around $20 million, largely thanks to long-term royalties from his iconic films and smart real estate investments. While he avoided scandal publicly, Wilder's life was defined by hidden battles, an entertainer who masked sorrow with whimsy and whose final years were as quietly tragic as they were invisible to the world. Roy Conir was born on January 8, 1934, and played the indulgent Mr. Salt, the pompous, wealthy father of Veruca Salt, in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory at the age of 37. Conir infused the role with a comic arrogance, portraying a man too blind to see the monster his parenting had created. While his performance provided much of the film's comedic relief, Roy's off-screen life was anything but lighthearted. Raised in the shadow of war, his father, a national rugby hero, died in a tragic accident when Roy was just 4, leaving the family in emotional and financial turmoil. Roy battled chronic self-esteem issues and body image struggles throughout his life. Despite becoming a household name in British comedy, he was often mocked for his weight, and producers pigeonholed him into fat fool roles, leaving him embittered. He longed for serious drama and once auditioned for Shakespearean roles, only to be rejected repeatedly, humiliations that triggered deep depression and compulsive eating habits. Though married to actress Carmel Cryan, their relationship was strained by Roy's unpredictable moods, emotional withdrawals, and long absences during filming. Their son Rory Conir later spoke of his father's sadness and the sense that he never felt good enough, despite his acclaim. Roy's darkest moment came during the 1988 filming of The Return of the Musketeers, when he fell from a horse in Madrid due to inadequate safety measures. He suffered a fractured pelvis and internal bleeding and died the next day on September 20th, 1988, at just 54. His death led to a massive outcry over film set safety, with the director facing lawsuits and the family receiving a confidential settlement. Despite decades of work, Conir's financial legacy was modest. His net worth was estimated to be under £200,000 with no major assets. His story, often overlooked, is a haunting reminder of a gifted man overshadowed by industry cruelty and a tragic end that could have, and should have, been prevented. Jack Albertson was born on June 16, 1907, and played the whimsical Grandpa Joe in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when he was 64 years old. On screen, Grandpa Joe was a figure of infectious optimism and loyalty, cheering for young Charlie and joining him on the fantastical factory tour. But for all the warmth he displayed, Albertson's real life was marked by cold struggle and profound emotional isolation. Raised in deep poverty by a single mother in Massachusetts, he spent his youth performing odd jobs, shoe shining, fishing, and even street hustling to survive. His big break didn't come until his late 40s, and he spent most of his career consumed by fear of returning to poverty. Albertson was famously private and prone to fits of rage during production. Multiple accounts from crew members painted him as irritable and sometimes cruel when things didn't go his way. Despite winning the rare acting Triple Crown, an Oscar, Emmy, and Tony, his paranoia about younger actors and new Hollywood trends left him professionally isolated by the late 70s. He was particularly bitter about his declining opportunities and was reportedly hostile toward agents who didn't land him leading roles, a grudge that continued until his final years. Personally, Albertson kept his marriage to Wallace Thompson largely out of the public eye, but family members have described it as emotionally distant and strained by long separations. He had one daughter, Maura, who later admitted in interviews that she often felt neglected. Diagnosed with colon cancer in 1978, he chose to conceal his illness and work through it in silence, refusing chemotherapy to avoid looking weak on camera. He died on November 25, 1981, in Los Angeles at the age of 74. Though widely respected, Albertson died with a relatively modest estate, estimated at under $1 million, due to medical costs and outdated royalty contracts. His legacy remains intact, but beneath the Hollywood glow was a man burdened by fear, fading fame, and emotional detachment. Leonard Stone was born on March 11, 1923, and played the overbearing Mr. Sam Beauregard in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in 1971 at the age of 48. Known for his boisterous confidence and relentless promotion of his daughter Violet's gum-chewing talent, the character was a parody of the loud-mouthed American businessman, obnoxious, clueless, and utterly obsessed with profit. Behind Leonard Stone's polished facade was a darker, often overlooked past. Raised in Depression-era Oregon, he came from a family plagued by instability. His father abandoned the family early on, and Leonard spent part of his childhood in state-run institutions. His early years were marked by economic hardship, academic struggles, and a violent stint in the Navy, where he witnessed the brutality of war firsthand. He studied acting at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. But even after winning a Tony Award, Stone struggled with deep-seated imposter syndrome. Colleagues described him as manically driven, often obsessing over minor performance details, and he was infamously difficult on set, reportedly clashing with Willy Wonka director Mel Stewart over creative differences. One career-wounding scandal occurred in the late 70s when he was accused by a young male actor of coercion during a production workshop in New York. Though the claim never led to legal action, it was quietly buried by his agents. Yet it cost him roles in major projects, including a rumored part in Dallas. Stone's marriage to Carol was long-lasting, but far from idyllic. Their relationship was said to be riddled with passive-aggressive resentment and long periods of silence. His relationship with his children remained strained, with one daughter describing him as more comfortable being Mr. Beauregard than Dad. As he aged, Stone turned reclusive, battling prostate cancer in private while refusing sympathy. He died on February 11, 2011 in Encinitas, California, just one day before his 88th birthday. At the time of his death, his assets included residual royalties, a modest home, and stage memorabilia, bringing his estimated net worth to roughly $600,000. Diana Saul, born June 19, 1930, in Chico, California, Portrayed Mrs. Bucket in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in 1971 at age 41. Her performance as Charlie's kind, resilient mother was deeply moving, a portrayal that touched millions with quiet strength. Yet Saul's off-screen reality was far more complex. Raised in a household shaken by the Great Depression, her childhood was riddled with instability. Her father, a failed prospector turned drunk, was in and out of jail for petty theft, while her mother, once an aspiring singer, became emotionally distant, bitter from unfulfilled dreams. Diana fled home at 18, working a string of jobs before discovering her passion for acting. Though her role in Willy Wonka gained lasting fame, it ironically did little for her acting career. She was passed over for major roles throughout the 70s and 80s, with some casting agents labeling her too soft or forgettable. Her deepest career wound came in 1983, when a promising TV pilot she headlined was abruptly canceled mid-production due to studio conflicts, allegedly triggered by a producer's discomfort with her offbeat demeanor and insistence on creative input. Her marriage to Robert Saul, a diplomat, was fraught with tension over her career setbacks and long absences. He reportedly disapproved of her decision to continue acting and teaching after his retirement. They lived apart in their final years. Though she found renewed purpose tutoring underprivileged children in Washington, D.C., Diana struggled financially and emotionally following Robert's death in the 1990s. She passed away on October 19, 2018, at age 88 of natural causes, her estate modest and primarily consisting of voiceover royalties and personal belongings. Valued at under $500,000, her legacy lives not in wealth or awards, but in the understated grace she brought to a beloved role and the invisible hardships she quietly bore for decades. Denise Nickerson, born on January 4, 1957, famously portrayed Violet Beauregard in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, at only 14 years old. Brash, sassy, and unrelentingly confident, Violet remains an unforgettable character, thanks to her explosive blueberry transformation. But Denise's life off-screen was far more tragic than magical. Raised in a troubled Manhattan household, her mother reportedly forced her into auditions as early as age 5 to escape their impoverished reality. Her father was virtually absent, and Denise endured verbal abuse and crippling anxiety throughout her childhood. On set, she was treated like a miniature adult, working long hours and enduring pressure to maintain a specific, marketable look, often being weighed and critiqued by executives. Post-Wonka, she enjoyed brief success with roles in Dark Shadows and The Electric Company, but her career dried up after she rejected a casting couch proposition from a prominent producer, something she alluded to in later interviews, though never naming names. At 17, she was in a car crash that severely injured her leg and ended her acting aspirations. Her adult life spiraled into depression, addiction to prescription medication, and multiple failed marriages. In her 30s, she attempted to start over as a nurse, but suffered a breakdown after losing custody of her son. That son, later in life, stated publicly that Denise was haunted by Violet and lived in the shadow of a childhood she never chose. In 2018, she suffered a massive stroke and was left incapacitated, relying on GoFundMe donations from fans for basic care. She died on October 7, 2019, at the age of 62, from pneumonia complications in Aurora, Colorado. Denise left behind virtually no estate, her possessions auctioned online to cover medical costs, and her net worth at death was estimated below $100,000. Her heartbreaking downfall from national sweetheart to forgotten starlet remains one of the most tragic legacies of the film. David Batley, born May 11, 1935 in Battersea, London, portrayed Mr. Turkentine in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in 1971 at age 36. His sharp wit and uniquely deadpan delivery made him an audience favorite as the weary, sarcastic schoolteacher. But beneath the humor was a man who lived much of his life in discomfort and contradiction. Born with a congenital heart condition, Batley spent much of his childhood in and out of hospitals, unable to participate in sports or social circles, an outsider even at home, where his emotionally cold father ran a hardware shop and expected David to follow suit. Drawn instead to theater, David faced brutal rejections early in his career. His unconventional appearance and offbeat timing made him a difficult fit in traditional roles, and he developed a reputation as brilliant but unmanageable. On numerous productions, he was known to improvise without permission, rewrite lines, and walk off set mid-scene when he felt the director lacked artistic intelligence. One major television opportunity in 1985, where he was cast as a lead in a BBC comedy, collapsed when he abruptly quit 2 days before filming, citing creative bankruptcy, leaving the network scrambling and damaging his professional reputation. Batley never married, and despite several affairs, most notably with a younger theater actress in the early 90s, he kept his personal life fiercely private. Friends reported long periods of self-isolation and growing dependence on pain medication in his later years. He died of a heart attack on the 20th of January 2003 in London at age 67, found alone in his modest Battersea flat. His estate, composed of a rented property, a collection of vintage radio equipment, and modest acting residuals, was estimated at around £200,000. David Batley remains a paradox, a comic genius with razor-sharp timing who quietly suffered from chronic illness, deep loneliness, and a lifelong refusal to compromise for the industry he both loved and resented. Peter Capel, born March 9, 1912, played the mysterious tinker in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, at age 59, uttering a single cryptic warning that became one of the film's most quoted lines. Though his role was brief, Capel's eerie presence set a chilling tone, hinting that the factory's magic came at a cost. A master of minor roles with maximum impact, Capel's real life was filled with elusive chapters. Born to a Jewish-German family in Berlin, he fled Nazi Germany in 1933 under a false identity. During his years in exile, he worked as a voice actor in underground propaganda networks, activities that were rumored but never fully confirmed. He resurfaced in the 1950s in the US under the radar, taking small radio parts before landing a brief but powerful role in Kubrick's Passive Glory. However, his Hollywood career failed to take off. Insiders blamed his paranoia, born from years of political surveillance. Capel distrusted agents, refused interviews, and often disappeared between gigs for months at a time. Several directors noted his erratic behavior, including one instance where he walked off a live TV production mid-broadcast, believing he was being followed. His personal life was a closed door. He married once, briefly, to an American jazz singer who later disappeared from the public eye. Rumors swirled of emotional abuse, with one acquaintance claiming she fled the marriage under psychiatric care. Capel returned to Germany in 1955, but by then had become something of a recluse. A failed attempt to write a memoir was shelved when publishers found it unintelligible, a confusing blend of fact, fantasy, and conspiracy. He died on March 3, 1986 in Munich at age 73. The cause of death was never made public. His apartment was found littered with surveillance equipment and dozens of unpublished screenplays. His estate, valued under $500,000, was contested by distant relatives. Capel remains an unsettling mystery, a man who knew too much, said too little, and left behind whispers no one could verify. Norah Denny, known professionally as Dodo Denny, was born on March 9, 1927, and took on the role of Mrs. TV in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, at the age of 44. As the oblivious and permissive mother of the screen-obsessed Mike TV, Denny embodied the role with comedic ease, playing a woman whose passivity was both funny and unsettling. Yet her own life story was filled with painful contradictions. Born in Kansas City, she grew up in a strict Catholic household where women were expected to be quiet and obedient. Two traits Norah rejected early on. Her rebellious spirit led her to secretly pursue acting, abandoning a fiancé to run off to Los Angeles in the late 1940s. Her rise in the entertainment world was slow and marred by typecasting. She was rarely cast as anything other than quirky side characters. A heavy smoker and self-proclaimed chaos magnet, Denny was known for eccentric behavior. She once stormed off a TV set mid-scene after a wardrobe disagreement, and crew members often whispered about her short temper and reliance on Valium to stay calm during long shoots. The biggest professional scandal of her career came in 1978 when she accused a director of sexual harassment and was swiftly dropped from 3 TV contracts. Her claim was dismissed publicly, though it later gained quiet support from industry insiders during the Me Too era. Denny's personal life wasn't easier. Her marriage to actor Jim Mallon disintegrated amid allegations of infidelity and domestic violence, though both parties denied press inquiries. She became estranged from her youngest son, who alleged emotional neglect, and described growing up in a house of laughter that turned dark behind the curtain. Denny developed breast cancer in her early 70s but refused chemotherapy, believing in holistic healing methods instead. She died on November 20th, 2005, in Los Angeles at age 78. Her estate included a small Burbank bungalow, a few acting residuals, and personal memorabilia, valued around $350,000. Tim Brook Taylor, born July 17, 1940, in Buxton, England, played the uncredited computer operator in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in 1971, when he was 31. Though a fleeting presence in the film, he delivered a clever, deadpan moment that lampooned humanity's dependence on machines. Brook Taylor was a beloved figure in British comedy, particularly for his anarchic work in The Goodies and longtime role in I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. But few knew that behind his public joviality was a man constantly battling imposter syndrome and the looming fear of becoming obsolete. Raised in an emotionally distant household with a controlling father who dismissed acting as frivolous, Tim grew up hiding his vulnerability under layers of wit. His comedy masked a lifelong anxiety disorder, which was exacerbated after the BBC canceled The Goodies despite high ratings. The cancellation triggered a deep depression that he never fully addressed publicly. His private life appeared stable, but insiders noted frequent fights with collaborators over creative ownership. In one explosive meeting in 1976, he stormed out of a pitch session with the BBC, accusing them of sabotage, an incident buried to protect his brand. Though no major scandal ever surfaced, those close to him described his Jekyll and Hyde moods, affable in public, but quietly bitter and jealous of younger talents rising in the 1980s. His marriage to Christine Whedon lasted decades, but their relationship was strained, partly due to his career-first obsession and chronic avoidance of emotional intimacy. In his final years, Tim was racked by financial instability. He made poor investment decisions in fringe theater projects that never recouped. When he died of COVID-19 complications on April 12, 2020, at the age of 79, probate documents revealed he left just £2,000 in liquid assets after debts. Though he co-owned a valuable London property estimated at over £2 million, it was heavily mortgaged. The news shocked fans who had assumed he lived comfortably. Posthumously, his comedic legacy remained intact, but behind the applause lay a man who, for all his laughter, died quietly, burdened by debts, creative disappointment, and the gnawing feeling that he'd never been taken as seriously as he hoped. Ursula Wright, born on May 3, 1914, played Mrs. Gloop in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in 1971 at the age of 57. Known for portraying the cheerfully oblivious mother of Augustus Gloop, Wright's role was comical on the surface, but underscored darker themes of excess and parental indulgence. Off-camera, her life was far less jovial. Born into post-World War I Germany, Ursula grew up in poverty, with her father lost in war and her mother a strict disciplinarian who disapproved of emotional expression. This lack of affection haunted Ursula into adulthood, contributing to her intensely private life and rumored chronic depression. Despite her prolific work in German television and film throughout the 1950s to 1980s, Wright was consistently typecast into roles of eccentric or grotesque older women, which limited both her creative potential and professional respect. Colleagues in Berlin whispered of her unpredictable moods and a rumored alcohol dependency during the late 1970s, particularly after she was abruptly dropped from a high-profile TV series following a screaming match on set. Though no formal scandals surfaced, Wright reportedly maintained romantic relationships with younger female stage actresses. something she never acknowledged publicly in conservative mid-century Germany. She never married, had no children, and lived an increasingly reclusive life after retiring in 1995. Her death on September 11, 1998 at age 84 was from natural causes, but eerily, her body went undiscovered for days in her Berlin flat, further highlighting her isolation. Ursula left behind 2 modest properties in Berlin and California, personal memorabilia, and a small savings account. Her total estate was estimated under 300,000 euros. Despite a life spent on camera, Ursula Wright died in near obscurity, a woman who once embodied loud maternal indulgence, but lived and died surrounded by silence. Gunnar Meisner, born 18 April 1926, played the enigmatic and unnerving Mr. Slugworth, revealed later as Mr. Wilkinson, in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, at age 45. Cold, manipulative, and always lurking in the shadows, Slugworth was the face of temptation in the story, a role Meisner embodied with a disturbingly convincing intensity. His portrayal added an undercurrent of fear to the film's sugary whimsy, a psychological layer that stayed with audiences long after the credits. But behind that cold gaze was a man forged in post-war chaos. Orphaned as a teen during World War II and deeply affected by the horrors of Nazi Germany, Meisner's early life was spent hiding his Jewish friends from authorities, a fact he never publicly disclosed until the 1980s. Despite building a successful career in German and international cinema, he struggled with typecasting. His chilling portrayals of Adolf Hitler, 4 times in total, haunted his reputation, with many accusing him of being too comfortable in fascist roles. Meisner once responded bitterly, "Someone has to show the monster, even if it burns your soul." Off-screen, his reputation was far from clean. Several co-stars reported him as controlling and explosive on set, prone to alcohol-fueled tirades and cruel pranks on junior crew. A scandal in 1978 involving allegations of inappropriate behavior toward a female stage assistant during a production in Munich was quietly settled out of court and buried by the studio. His personal life was turbulent. He divorced twice and had a strained relationship with his only son, who later publicly accused him of emotional abuse. Though Meisner found some redemption in his humanitarian work in Biafra, distributing aid during the Nigerian Civil War, the effort seemed fueled by guilt rather than charity. He died of heart failure on May 12, 1994 in Berlin, at age 68. His estate included a modest Berlin apartment, a vintage Mercedes-Benz, and minor royalty rights. At death, his net worth was estimated at approximately $400,000. Posthumously, Meisner remains a controversial figure, remembered as much for the shadows he embodied as the causes he quietly supported. Victor Bumont, born on November 7, 1912, in Berlin, Germany, played the uncredited doctor who examined Mike Teavee's obsession with television in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in 1971 at the age of 59. His short but sharply satirical scene functioned as a critique of screen addiction, delivered with an icy clinical detachment that mirrored his signature style. Off-camera, Beaumont was a mystery cloaked in politeness. Born Peter Wolf, he fled Nazi Germany under a false name after narrowly escaping internment due to his partial Jewish heritage and anti-Nazi sentiments. His parents vanished during the Holocaust, and he rarely spoke of them. Traumatized and repressed, he sought safety in Britain, but lived in a shadow of fear and survivor's guilt. Though multilingual and classically trained, he was almost always cast as cold villains or Nazi officers, a pattern that embittered him. He resented being reduced to a stereotype and turned increasingly reclusive. His biggest career blow came in 1964, when he was replaced last minute in a BBC drama due to backlash from Jewish groups who found his casting as a Holocaust survivor offensive, ironically because of his long history of playing Nazis. In his personal life, he married British actress Joan Reeve, but the union was loveless and plagued by rumors of his cold emotional distance and long-standing affair with a male screenwriter, a scandal that never surfaced publicly due to the era's taboos. The couple separated quietly. Beaumont developed a drinking problem by the early 70s and often vanished from sets, only to return disheveled and aggressive. He died of a stroke on March 21, 1977, at age 64, alone in his Hampstead flat. His will revealed a meager estate valued at under £40,000, composed mostly of old war memorabilia, film posters, and royalty checks from small roles. He left no direct descendants. Posthumously, his contribution was largely erased by Hollywood, and no biographies or retrospectives followed. Though his face became synonymous with wartime villains, the man behind it died quietly, burdened by typecasting, repression, and the ghosts of a past he never truly escaped. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.